The galaxy was never truly silent. Across the stars, countless ships, stations, and listening posts filled the void with signals, messages, and chatter. But on that night, in a cold and empty sector near the edge of known space, something unusual broke the pattern. A faint signal, a whisper, a call that should not exist. The old listening post that detected it was manned by two bored operators, both belonging to the insectoid rill species. Their job was dull, their sector forgotten. Nothing ever happened there because nothing lived there. The system had been dead for millions of years. Its star collapsed into a pale ember, and yet a signal came from it. The younger operator flicked his antenna nervously. "Are you hearing this?" he asked. His partner adjusted the receiver, expecting static. But the signal was clear, too clear. It carried words, though the language was old, ancient, beyond their knowledge. The sound was harsh, human speech. It repeated again and again. A distress call. A cry from the past. The two operators froze. They had studied history well enough to recognize one fact. No other species had ever used that language. Only one race had spoken in those sharp, commanding tones. Only one race had sent such calls. Humans. But humans were gone. Or at least that's what the galaxy believed. Their worlds had burned. Their fleets had been shattered. Their soldiers had vanished. Humanity was remembered only as a warning in textbooks and whispered stories told to frighten young cadets. Yet now, here was their voice, echoing across the dark. The operators quickly transmitted the discovery to Central Command. Within hours, every government in the sector had the signal. Within a day, the entire Galactic Council was listening to it, and panic began to spread. The Council's great chamber was filled with chaos. Delegates of hundreds of species crowded into the hall, their voices rising in fear and disbelief. The signal played again, echoing off the walls. The translation software struggled with the age of the dialect. But the meaning was clear enough. This is the Leviathan. Supercarrier class, engines offline. Systems damaged. Requesting assistance. Coordinates locked. A silence followed, heavy and suffocating. The word Leviathan shook the chamber like thunder. The Council had tried for centuries to erase it from memory. The Human Supercarrier program had been purged from records, hidden in sealed archives. Those ships had been monsters, massive war machines, capable of launching entire planetary invasions alone. Only a few had ever been built, and they had vanished in humanity's final war. Impossible, a reptilian delegate hissed. No ship of that class survived. They were destroyed. Destroyed? Or buried? An avian diplomat croaked back. The debate grew heated. Some called the signal a trick, a fabrication spread by pirates or rebels. Others claimed it was simply an echo, a leftover transmission bouncing through time. But as they argued, the distress call continued, steady, relentless, undeniable. Each repetition carried the same coordinates. Each word carried the same weight of dread. The Council's presiding speaker, an aged Severian, finally silenced the chamber with a strike of his staff. "We must face the truth," he said slowly. "This is not a random noise. This is not an echo. It is a human signal, one that matches no known forgery. And it speaks the name of a ship class that should not exist." Around him, the chamber filled with unease. Delegates whispered, some in fear, others in anger. The name of the ship spread like fire, Leviathan. Far away in the outer colonies, rumors moved faster than any council decree. Merchants and smugglers told each other wild stories. They said a supercarrier was stirring beneath a dead star. They said its engines were coming back to life. They said its guns were still loaded, its hangars still full, and in every bar, every dock, every outpost, one phrase was repeated in a fearful whisper: "The humans are coming back." Back in the chamber, the council split into factions. One group argued to send fleets immediately, to investigate the source and destroy it before it could awaken. Another group urged caution, terrified of provoking something they did not understand. A third faction, mostly smaller species who remembered human protection fondly, whispered dangerous ideas. What if this ship could be used as an ally, as a weapon against the Council's rivals? But deep down, they all feared the same thing. If the Leviathan had survived, then others might have as well. And if even one supercarrier truly awakened, no fleet in the galaxy could stop it. The records told enough. A single Leviathan carried hundreds of strike craft, armored divisions, orbital bombardment weapons, and experimental human technology no one else had ever replicated. Whole empires had fallen when humanity unleashed them. The galaxy had worked hard to bury that memory. Now it was clawing its way back to the surface. The debate raged through the night. Delegates shouted, species accused each other, and fear rippled through the chamber. Yet beneath all their noise, the distress call continued, repeating steadily, "This is the Leviathan, Supercarrier class. Engines offline. Systems damaged. Requesting assistance. Coordinates locked." Over and over again, until at last something changed. At first it was faint, a tremor in the long-range scanners, a fluctuation in gravitational readings. The stars near the coordinates began to shift unnaturally. Energy readings spiked, and then came the rumble, not sound, not truly. It was vibration. A shudder felt across senses and minds alike. An old, forgotten machine had begun to stir. Operators across the galaxy reported the same thing. The dead system was waking. The Ember Star flared unnaturally bright. Space itself seemed to shiver, and for the first time in millennia, something impossibly vast began to move. The council chamber fell silent as live feeds appeared on the main display. Grainy images from reconnaissance drones showed shadows stirring in the void. Something massive lay there, half buried in the wreckage of old asteroids. Its black surface was scarred and broken, but unmistakable, a hull longer than cities. Armor-plated in dark alloys, markings in ancient human script. The Leviathan delegates gasped, some recoiling in terror, others frozen in awe. The ship was real. The ship was alive. As the chamber erupted into panic, the distress call stopped. For the first time, the silence was worse than the message. Because silence meant the ship was no longer calling for help. Silence meant it no longer needed rescuing. The stars rumbled louder. Engines as old as forgotten wars groaned back to life. Lights flickered across the massive hull. The Leviathan was awakening, and the galaxy panicked. The void was never meant to hold such a thing. The Leviathan lay in silence for millennia, its colossal body drifting near the dead star like a corpse in a graveyard. Asteroids had piled upon its hull. Dust and ice had sealed its scars, and legends had buried its name. But now, after centuries of stillness, the monster stirred. The first sign was light. Tiny pinpricks flared across the supercarrier's surface, one by one, like eyes opening in the dark. Red emergency beacons pulsed. Faint lines of power crawled along the hull, glowing like veins coming alive. A low vibration rippled outward, not sound but energy, a warning to any who listened. The Leviathan was waking. In the Galactic Council's war room, dozens of species leaned toward the live feeds. The images were shaky, captured by stealth drones circling the dead system. Each drone was cloaked, hidden, but even they shuddered when the Leviathan's sensors twitched in their direction. The room was tense. Delegates whispered in panic. Military advisors argued in harsh voices. The Speaker of the Council raised his hand for silence, but none obeyed. "What we see is impossible," hissed an insectoid general, his mandibles clicking in fear. "That ship is ancient. No machine should survive this long, and yet it moves," growled a reptilian admiral. The drones showed more. A cavernous hangar door, kilometers wide, slowly groaned as it unlocked. Dust and ice shattered, spinning away into the void. Inside, the black mouths of launch bays stared outward. Empty, for now. Another feed showed massive cannons along the Leviathan's side, each one the size of a starship, shifting slightly as their mounts tested movement. They did not fire, but their threat was clear. Even silent, they radiated terror. In a mining colony on the edge of the sector, workers gathered around old holoscreens. Rumors had spread too quickly for officials to contain them. The people watched, wide-eyed, as the shaky images filled the screen. "That's human," whispered an elder, his voice trembling. "That writing, that ship, I've seen it in the old archives, but humans are gone," a young worker protested. The elder only shook his head. "Not gone, waiting." The words spread through the colony, then across stations, then across trade routes. Every ship, every bar, every dark corner of the galaxy repeated the same phrase. "The humans are back." Back in the war room, panic turned to fury. "We must destroy it now," barked an aquatic delegate, slamming his finned hand on the table. "While it still stirs. Before it fully awakens." "And with what?" Another snapped. "Our fleets cannot match that thing. One ship like this burned 3 empires during the human wars. Have you all forgotten so easily?" The speaker struck his staff for silence. His voice shook, but his words carried weight. "Send a fleet," he ordered. "Not to engage, to observe. We must know if it is truly alive, or only a machine rattling in death." Within hours, fleets mobilized. Hundreds of ships warped into the system, keeping distance from the coordinates. They formed a wide perimeter, scanning constantly, broadcasting warnings. The Leviathan ignored them. It continued its awakening. Its engines groaned, massive fusion cores struggling to breathe after centuries. Energy ripples spread outward, bending space. The dead star flared unnaturally bright, as if feeding on the carrier's awakening power. Inside the ship, deep in forgotten corridors, machines moved for the first time in ages. Repair drones unfolded from alcoves, crawling across the hull, cutting away debris, patching breaches. Ancient systems flickered alive. Shields, weapons, life support, all updating, all syncing, all preparing. And then came the sound. Not a voice, not words, but a deep, resonant pulse. Every fleet ship in orbit felt it at once. Sensors screamed. Hulls vibrated. Crew members clutched their heads in pain as the pulse echoed through their minds. Some swore they heard whispers in old human language. Others collapsed outright. When the pulse ended, silence returned. But it was no longer the silence of a dead ship. It was the silence of something alive, watching, waiting. The fleet commanders held their ground. "Trembling. Transmit again," one whispered. A message was sent, a demand for identification, for purpose, for surrender. The Leviathan answered, not with words, with movement. Its colossal bulk shifted, shedding asteroids like dust. Armor plating cracked open to reveal fresh metal beneath. Energy shields rippled outward, shimmering across its hull. The supercarrier turned slowly, deliberately, facing the nearest fleet. And then its hangar bays began to open wider. Panic spread across the fleet. Admirals screamed conflicting orders. Some ships prepared weapons. Others begged to retreat. The younger crews, who had never faced humans, struggled to understand why seasoned veterans were already terrified. The veterans knew. They remembered. And they feared the return of the old war. "Hold position," one commander ordered, his voice breaking. "Do not fire unless fired upon." The hangars finished opening. For a long moment, nothing happened. Only darkness inside, cold and endless. Then came movement. Shapes emerged. Not ships yet. Not drones. But something stirred within, too deep for scanners to penetrate. The galaxy held its breath. Meanwhile, in the council chamber, the speaker received the first fleet reports. His skin turned pale. His hands trembled on his staff. "The Leviathan has turned toward them," he whispered. The chamber erupted again. Some demanded retreat. Others demanded immediate attack. None dared suggest doing nothing. But above their chaos, one voice spoke, calm but cold, an ancient historian. One of the last scholars allowed to study humanity's war. "You fools," the historian said. "Do you not remember why the Leviathans were built? They were not ships. They were nations. They carried whole armies, whole civilizations within them. If it lives, then its people live as well." The chamber fell silent. The thought was too much, too dangerous, too terrifying. If the Leviathan's crew had survived, frozen or hidden, then humanity itself had survived, and they would not forgive. In the dead system, the Leviathan's engines roared louder. A blinding light spilled from its core. The nearest fleet ships scrambled to hold formation, their sensors overloading, and in that light, the galaxy realized the truth. The Leviathan was not broken. It was not dead. It was simply waking, and the galaxy could do nothing but watch. The galaxy had known fear before. Wars had raged. Empires had fallen. Stars had burned. But this fear was different. This fear spread without fleets or fire. It traveled faster than light, faster than ships, faster than truth itself. It spread through whispers. The signal of the Leviathan had reached the council, the fleets, the colonies. But now it reached something more dangerous, the common people. Traders carried it between ports. Miners passed it across dark channels. Pirates told it in smoky dens. Refugees repeated it in hushed tones, and everywhere the words were the same. The humans are back. Some laughed, pretending not to believe. Others trembled, remembering stories told by their elders. And some, very few, smiled, for they remembered humans not as monsters, but as protectors. Whispers became rumors. Rumors became fear. Fear became chaos. In a border station on the rim of Zorath space, a group of young cadets gathered around a cracked holoscreen. They watched grainy images of the Leviathan captured by stealth drones. "It's too big," one whispered. "No ship can be that size." "Not a ship," another muttered. "A fortress," they argued, trying to comfort themselves. But one cadet's grandfather shuffled into the room. His skin was pale, his eyes dim with age. He had lived long enough to remember the human wars. "You children do not understand," he rasped. "When humans fought, they did not fight like us. They did not fight to win battles. They fought to erase enemies." The cadets fell silent. "They will come," the old man said. "And when they do, nothing will remain." In the capital world of the Avrian Dominion, the High Nest convened in secret. The avian overlords, who once betrayed humanity in their final war, argued fiercely. "We must strike now," one screeched, "before it gathers strength." "Strike with what?" another demanded. "Our fleets are shadows compared to that beast." The council chamber filled with shrill cries and fluttering wings, but beneath it all was the same truth. They were terrified. For the Avrians remembered best of all. It had been their fleets that first provoked Earth. It had been their arrogance that led to the rise of the Leviathans, and it would be their blood the humans came for first. In the distant Outrim colonies, whispers had a different tone. A group of scavenger captains huddled in a forgotten bar. They played the distress signal on repeat, listening to the harsh human tongue. "That's not a call for help," one said quietly. "That's a warning." The others shifted uneasily. "What do you mean?" The scavenger leaned close, his voice low. "Humans never begged, not once. If that ship is broadcasting, it's not asking us to save it. It's telling us it's awake." The Galactic Council tried to contain the rumors, but it was too late. Every attempt at censorship only fueled the fear. The distress call was everywhere, encoded into music, hidden in shipping manifests, whispered in marketplaces, and as the message spread, it changed. Some repeated it truthfully. "This is the Leviathan. Systems damaged. Requesting assistance," but others twisted it. "This is the Leviathan. We are coming. This is the Leviathan. Prepare to die. This is the Leviathan. Humanity has returned. Truth no longer mattered. Only fear did. The fleets surrounding the Leviathan held position, but their crews grew restless. Young officers asked too many questions. Veterans avoided speaking at all. Every hour, more ships arrived, forming a wall of steel around the ancient monster, and still it moved. The Leviathan's hull shed the last of its asteroid covering. Its black armor gleamed. More lights flared alive across its vast surface. Hangar bays yawned open, deeper than cities, shadows moving within. Yet still no attack came, only silence, only waiting. For soldiers trained to fight, the waiting was worse than war. In the council's chambers, the arguments grew louder, sharper. "Destroy it before it finishes waking," cried one delegate. "You saw what it did to our patrols," another snapped. Whole squadrons vanished with a single pulse. "If we attack, we will all die. Better to die fighting than to kneel to humans again," a third shouted. The chamber descended into chaos. until one voice rose above the storm. It was the historian again. "You do not understand," she said. Her feathers were grey, her eyes old, her voice weary. "You think this is about a ship. It is not. The Leviathans were more than war machines. They carried seeds of human worlds, armies, factories, knowledge. If this one lives, it is not alone. Others may wait." A heavy silence followed. The delegates looked at one another, realizing the scale of the nightmare. What if the Leviathan was not unique? What if others would follow? The galaxy trembled at the thought. Across neutral zones, pirate lords sent their fleets scattering, unwilling to risk the path of the humans. On farming worlds, mothers told their children to stay close, as if humanity might appear in their skies at any moment. And in the secret corners of the galaxy, hidden cults rose overnight, worshipping the Leviathan as a god that had come to punish the stars. The whispers grew louder. The fear spread faster, but in the system of the dead star, the Leviathan itself finally broke its silence. The fleets watched as its hull shifted again. Panels opened. Arrays unfolded. Antennas rose like spines. The ship began to transmit, not just to the fleets, not just to the Council, but across the galaxy. A flood of human code burst into the void, encrypted, complex, impossible to crack. It carried through wormholes, through relays, through hidden channels. Every listening post recorded it. Every intelligence agency scrambled to decipher it, but no one could. The message was unreadable to all but one: humanity. The whispers exploded into frenzy. What if the code is calling other ships? What if it is summoning an army? What if Earth is still alive? No one knew, and that ignorance was more terrifying than any weapon. In the final hours of the cycle, as the fleet stood trembling before the giant, another pulse rippled from the Leviathan. This time, it was not just energy. This time, voices accompanied it. Dozens of voices, layered over one another, speaking old human language. Some calm, some cold, some angry. The crews listening could not understand the words, but they understood the tone. The humans were awake, and they were speaking to one another. The whispers across the stars fell silent for a moment, then returned louder than ever, because the galaxy now knew one thing with certainty. The Leviathan was not empty. The Leviathan had a crew, and they had just begun to stir. The Galactic Council chamber was built to inspire awe. It was a vast dome of silver and glass, suspended in orbit above the shining world of Korath Prime. Light from the nearby star poured through the ceiling, reflecting off banners of every major species. Normally, the chamber was a place of order, where voices debated in measured tones. But on this day, order was gone. Fear had taken its place. Delegates shouted over one another, their voices a storm of panic. Wings beat against the air, tails lashed, mandibles clicked. The sound was chaos. Fear turned into noise. All of it because of one name, one ship. When Nightmare returned to life, the Leviathan, reports from the dead system streamed in every hour. The Supercarrier's hull had cleared itself of debris. Its hangars had opened. Its engines glowed brighter with every cycle. And now, encrypted human code poured across the stars, messages no alien could understand. The delegates knew what this meant. They did not need translations. Humanity was speaking again. The very thought shook them. The Speaker of the Council slammed his staff for silence. His scaled hands trembled as he gripped the ancient symbol of authority. "We must act with clarity," he said. His voice echoed, but it did not calm the storm. "Panic will not protect us. We must decide together how to respond to this threat." "Threat?" spat an avian delegate, her feathers bristling. "Do you call it only a threat? That ship is death itself. We cannot respond. We must destroy it." A reptilian admiral thumped his tail in agreement. "Send the fleets. Strike now while it is still waking. If we wait, it will kill us all." Others roared in protest. "You fool!" shouted a crystalline envoy, their voice ringing like broken glass. "Did you not see what happened to our patrols? Whole squadrons erased in seconds. That ship is beyond our strength." "It has not attacked us yet," an insectoid delegate hissed. "Perhaps it will not. Perhaps it remembers different enemies. Why should we provoke it? Why should we trust it? Another snapped. Have you all forgotten the human wars? Have you forgotten how close they came to burning this entire galaxy? The chamber spiraled into shouting again, and then a single voice cut through. It was the historian, the same grey-feathered scholar who had spoken before, one of the last allowed to study human history without censorship. Her voice was quiet, but it carried across the room like a blade through silence. You argue about whether to attack or to wait, she said, but none of you remember what the Leviathans truly were. The chamber stilled. Delegates turned toward her, unwilling but unable to ignore. They were not ships, the historian whispered. They were nations. They carried more than weapons. They carried cities, factories, armies, knowledge. If the Leviathan is awake, then humanity's war is not over. It is only paused. A shudder passed through the chamber. If its crew still lives, she continued, they believe they are still at war. They will not see us as rulers or allies. They will see us as the enemy who betrayed them. Her words fell heavy as stone. Silence followed for a long moment. Delegates shifted uneasily, but none could argue. Then slowly the speaker asked, "What do you suggest, historian?" She looked at him with eyes full of sorrow. "There is no suggestion, only truth. If the Leviathan is awake, then the galaxy stands on the edge of fire once more." The silence shattered as the chamber erupted again. Some shouted for immediate war. Some demanded retreat, abandoning nearby sectors to their fate. Others suggested desperate alliances, even with pirates and warlords, if it meant standing a chance against humanity. But beneath all the noise, one truth lingered. The galaxy was afraid, terrified in a way it had not been for centuries, and fear made them dangerous. While the council argued, fear spread to their people. On farming worlds, families hid food and built shelters. On border stations, riots broke out as citizens demanded evacuation. On military outposts, soldiers sharpened weapons and whispered of human vengeance, and across the stars, one phrase echoed louder than any council decree. The humans have returned. Back in the chamber, a desperate proposal rose. "We must attempt contact," said a Severian envoy. His long arms trembled, but his voice was steady. "If we can communicate, if we can show that the war is over, perhaps they will not destroy us." Communicate. The avian delegate screeched. "With monsters, with predators, they do not parley. They devour." "They were not monsters," the historian whispered. "They were warriors, and warriors respect strength and honesty." The chamber fell into tense silence again. The speaker gripped his staff tightly. His scales shimmered with unease. He knew the truth as well as anyone. The council was not united. It could barely decide what meal to serve in its halls. Against humanity, it would fracture, but still a decision had to be made. "Very well," the speaker said at last. "We will attempt contact, but at the same time, we will prepare our fleets. If the Leviathan comes for us, we must not be caught unready." His words carried across the chamber, heavy with dread, for even as he spoke them, reports poured in from the dead system. The Leviathan was no longer still. Its engines blazed brighter. Its hangars rumbled with movement. Its weapons shifted like waking beasts, and worse, its signal had changed. No longer was it a simple distress call. Now it carried a new message, one word, repeated across every frequency. One word in harsh human tones. Awakening, the chamber erupted into chaos again. Delegates screamed, some in denial, some in terror. The speaker's staff struck the floor again and again. But order did not return, because everyone in that chamber, no matter their species, no matter their politics, understood the same thing. The Leviathan was no longer asking for help. The Leviathan was no longer broken. The Leviathan was choosing to rise, and the galaxy had no idea how to stop it. The fleet gathered in silence. Hundreds of alien warships floated in formation around the dead system, their hulls glowing faintly in the void. Banners of dozens of species flew, though none of them felt proud to be here. Every crew knew what waited inside the darkness. The human Leviathan. The council had argued for days. In the end, fear won. They could not allow the ship to awaken fully. They had agreed on a preventive strike, a polite phrase for something every soldier knew, a desperate gamble to kill the monster before it breathed. No one believed it would work. But no one dared say so aloud. Admiral Kane, commander of the Joint Fleet, stood on his bridge, staring at the view screen. His long reptilian face betrayed nothing, but inside, his heart raced. Before him, the image of the Leviathan hung in the void. It was no ordinary warship. Its hull stretched for kilometers, black metal patched with scars from ancient battles. Its surface glowed faintly with shifting lights, as though the ship itself still dreamed. Enormous hangars yawned open like mouths waiting to release horrors, and though it was silent, the Admiral felt as if the ship were watching him. "Admiral," said his second-in-command, voice tense. "The fleet is in position, awaiting your order." Kane hesitated. The Council had commanded this strike, yet every instinct screamed at him that this was folly. Still, duty left no choice. "Begin the assault," he ordered. The void came alive. Hundreds of ships surged forward. Energy beams lanced through the darkness. Torpedoes streaked across the black. Whole salvos of plasma fire hammered toward the Leviathan. For a moment, it looked like the sky itself was trying to kill the ship. The first blasts struck its hull and vanished. Shields shimmered across the Leviathan's surface. Not like the static barriers of alien fleets, but like ripples on a living ocean. Every strike was swallowed, absorbed, erased. Torpedoes exploded against invisible walls, their fury vanishing into nothing. The alien crews stared in horror. "This cannot be," whispered one officer. "That thing is still dormant. How can its shields already be stronger than our combined fire?" But before anyone could answer, the Leviathan moved. Its engines blazed to life, white fire tearing the darkness. Slowly, like a titan rising from a grave, the ship turned its massive bulk toward the fleet. Then its hangars opened wider. From the dark within, swarms poured out, small craft, too many to count. Fighters shaped like blades, drones that shimmered with strange energy, machines that had slept for centuries and now hungered for war. They did not wait for orders. They struck. The first alien cruiser vanished in a storm of plasma fire. Another shattered as drones burrowed into its hull, detonating from within. Whole squadrons of fighters tried to intercept, only to be shredded in seconds. The Leviathan had not fired a single main weapon yet, and already the fleet was dying. On Admiral Kane's bridge, alarms screamed. Crews shouted reports. Dozens of ships lost, hundreds crippled. "Concentrate fire on the hangars." Kane roared. Every ship obeyed, targeting the yawning bays. Beams and missiles slammed into the Leviathan. For a heartbeat, hope stirred. Shields flickered, explosions rocked the hull, and then the Leviathan answered. Its sides split open. A weapon emerged, vast and ancient. A cannon, larger than most ships, glowing with power older than the Council itself. For a second, silence fell across the battlefield. Then the cannon fired. A beam of white light tore across space. It did not strike a ship, it erased it. A whole dreadnought, gone in an instant, leaving only a fading afterimage burned into the eyes of those who saw it. The beam swept across the formation. 3 more ships vanished. Another was cut in half. Panic rippled through the fleet. "Fall back!" Voices cried over the comms. "We cannot win!" "Fall back!" But retreat was chaos. Fighters swarmed fleeing ships, cutting them down. The Leviathan's cannon fired again, erasing whole wings of vessels. Every moment the fleet crumbled. On the Council's private channel, delegates screamed demands. "Continue the attack. Protect the retreat. Sacrifice what you must. Just stop it." But Admiral Kane no longer listened. He saw the truth. This was not a battle. It was an execution. The Leviathan turned slowly, methodically, its weapons harvesting ships like a predator, culling prey. It did not rush. It did not fear. It destroyed with calm precision, as if war was simply its nature. And then, for the first time, it broadcast a message. Not a distress call. not awakening, one single human word, repeated on every channel in every tongue. Vengeance. The alien crews froze as the word echoed in their ears. Some ships faltered, paralyzed by terror. Others fled blindly, crashing into one another in their desperation. Admiral Kane gripped the edge of his command chair, his claws digging into metal. The humans were not simply returning. They remembered. They remembered everything. By the end of the battle, less than a quarter of the alien fleet remained. Broken ships fled into the void, carrying tales of terror back to their homeworlds, and in the dead system, the Leviathan drifted among the wreckage. Its hangars closed, its engines dimmed once more, but its weapons still glowed, ready for the next strike. The galaxy had challenged the forgotten warship, and the galaxy had lost. Across the stars, the message spread faster than light. Citizens whispered it. Soldiers repeated it with dread. Rulers tried to silence it, but could not. The humans have struck. The Leviathan is awake. Vengeance has begun. And far from the Council's reach, hidden colonies and old enemies of the galaxy heard the news and smiled, for not everyone feared humanity's return. Some had waited for it. For days, the galaxy whispered that the Leviathan must be empty. They told themselves it was impossible for humans to still live. They told themselves the ship fought on its own, controlled by machines guided by ghosts. But then, the voices came. It began as faint transmissions, static at first, garbled human tones echoing across the stars. Listening stations strained to decode them. At first, no one understood. But soon the words grew clearer. Not machines, not ghosts. Voices, living voices. On the bridge of the Leviathan, lights flickered on for the first time in centuries. Dust fell as ancient systems hummed to life. Screens glowed with data, corridors lit themselves, air recyclers thrummed with power, and in the command chair, a figure stirred. A man. Pale skin, scarred face, eyes sharp with purpose. His uniform was tattered but unmistakable. Human Fleet Admiral's colors. He opened his eyes, slow and heavy, as though waking from a nightmare centuries long. "Status report," he whispered. His voice cracked but carried authority. Around him, others stirred. Men and women, armored, scarred, wearing the insignias of long-dead human legions. Cryopods hissed open across the ship, releasing fog and coughing soldiers. One by one, the crew of the Leviathan returned to life. Alarms blared across alien space as the transmissions cleared. Now there was no doubt. Systems. Online. Squadrons. Launching. Human fleet standing by. The words chilled every species who heard them. In the Galactic Council chambers, panic spread like wildfire. "It's not drones," a delegate screamed. "It's not machines. The humans are alive." "They're alive." Some collapsed in despair. Others shouted for surrender before it was too late. But the speaker said nothing. He stared at the reports, scales trembling, knowing the truth no one wanted to voice. The galaxy had not fought the Leviathan. They had fought its shadows. The real storm had only begun. Back aboard the Leviathan, the Admiral stood, steady now. His officers reported with crisp voices, as though no time had passed. Engines at 87% capacity. Primary weapon fully charged. Hangar craft operational. The Admiral nodded. His gaze swept the viewscreen, across the wreckage of alien fleets. His expression was calm, but his eyes burned with memory. "How long have we slept?" he asked. His second, a tall woman with dark hair bound in a soldier's knot, answered softly. "By our clocks, more than 2,000 years." The bridge fell silent. The crew absorbed the weight of it. 2,000 years. The war they remembered was ancient history. The galaxy they had fought in was gone, but to them it felt like yesterday, and vengeance had not faded. The Admiral clenched his fists. "Then they thought us forgotten. They thought us buried." His voice hardened. "They will learn otherwise. Humanity does not fall." Around him, the crew answered in unison, their voices steady and cold. "Humanity does not fall." The Leviathan's next broadcast confirmed the galaxy's worst fear. Not a single word, not a machine tone, but the voice of a living human, calm and commanding. Speaking in ancient tongue, but carried with perfect clarity. This is Admiral Kane of the United Human Fleet. The Leviathan has returned. Panic swept across the stars. Worlds rioted. Armies refused orders. Entire sectors begged the Council for protection. Some planets prayed to their gods. Others cursed them, because now it was no longer a ghost ship. It was no longer a legend. It was an army, and it had a leader. On border worlds, children whispered human names in fear. On pirate strongholds, warlords raised their glasses in grim respect. On forgotten colonies, descendants of those who once fought beside humans, fires of hope rekindled. The galaxy fractured under the weight of one truth. The humans were alive. Admiral Kane wasted no time. "Begin reclamation protocols," he ordered. The ship obeyed. Drones spread into space, collecting wreckage, harvesting resources, reforging weapons. Hangars buzzed with life as fighters returned for refuel. Factories deep within the Leviathan thundered awake, producing machines of war unseen for ages. And in the cryo bays, more pods hissed open. More soldiers emerged, staggering, coughing, but alive. A whole legion, preserved in the dark, humanity's lost army, returned to finish what they began. The Council tried to act. Fleets were rallied, alliances signed in panic. But fear poisoned every order. Some refused to fight, terrified of sharing the fate of the First Fleet. Others whispered of surrender. A voice spread among them, spoken first in secret, then in public. Perhaps we cannot kill them. Perhaps we must beg them. But no one dared speak it too loudly, for to beg the humans was to admit weakness. And weakness was death. Back on the Leviathan's bridge, Admiral Kane studied the star map. His officers waited. He raised a hand, pointing toward the nearest Council sector. "Set course," he commanded. "Let them see us. Let them remember." The engines flared brighter than suns. The Leviathan turned toward living space, and the galaxy held its breath. The galaxy had not been united in centuries. Even under the rule of the Council, peace was thin, held together by fear and fragile treaties. But when the Leviathan rose, that fragile order broke apart like glass under a hammer. Now entire civilizations turned against one another, some out of terror, some out of greed, some out of hope. The galaxy was dividing. In the council chambers, shouting never stopped. Delegates hurled accusations like weapons. "You ordered the first strike. You doomed our fleets. You wanted to parley while the humans prepared to kill us. Your worlds must send ships. Ours already bleed." The speaker slammed his staff again and again, but no order returned. His scales were dull with exhaustion. He knew the truth. The council was breaking. Half the delegates wanted to fight until the end. Half whispered of surrender. And a few, a dangerous few, suggested something worse. "Perhaps we should ally with them," one delegate whispered. "Better to kneel than to burn." That whisper spread like poison. On border worlds, protests erupted into riots. Citizens screamed at their leaders, "Do not send our sons to die." Others demanded weapons, crying that they would rather fight than live under human rule. Entire garrisons mutinied, refusing orders to march. Some fled with their ships, abandoning their banners. Others deserted to an even darker choice. They turned their weapons not on humanity, but on their own neighbors. The great powers fractured first. The Xerac Combine, proud warriors, swore vengeance. They rallied fleets, promising to fight until the last. "Better extinction than chains," their leaders cried. But the Sivari Syndicate took a different path. Their leaders met in secret and began sending envoys, not to the Council, but to the Leviathan. They offered information, resources, even tribute. Anything to survive. The galaxy called them traitors. But in truth, they were only the first. Far from the Council, pirate lords and outlaw clans rejoiced. To them, the Leviathan was not a terror, but a beacon. "The old predators are back," they said, raising their weapons in salute. "The galaxy will burn again, and we will feast on the ashes." Some even sent pledges of loyalty to Admiral Kane, swearing their fleets to humanity if it meant revenge on the Council. And then there were the whispers of hope, not from the great powers, not from the ruling elites, but from forgotten colonies. Worlds abandoned long ago, forced to live on hostile rocks, hunted by alien rulers. They remembered their ancestors had fought beside humans. Their stories still carried human names. To them, the Leviathan was not a nightmare. It was salvation. On those worlds, people painted human emblems on their homes, their ships, their skin. They lit fires in the night sky, signals of loyalty. They waited for the Leviathan, not with fear, but with prayers. The Council knew all this. Reports poured in daily, worlds breaking away, fleets refusing orders, alliances shifting like sand in a storm. The speaker held his head in his hands. "We are not fighting humanity," he whispered to the historian. "We are fighting ourselves." The historian's eyes were sorrowful. That is what they always understood. Humanity did not conquer with weapons alone. They conquered with fear and with hope. Both are sharper than any blade. Meanwhile, on the Leviathan, Admiral Kane watched the chaos unfold through intercepted transmissions. His officers displayed maps of fractured sectors, burning colonies, collapsing alliances. He did not smile. He did not gloat. His expression was calm, cold, certain. "They are already broken," he said. "All we must do is advance." His second-in-command asked the question the crew feared, "And if some beg to join us?" Kane's answer was simple: "Then they will fight for us, or they will be discarded." Humanity does not share power. The Leviathan moved again. Its engines burned bright, carrying it into the nearest sector. Entire fleets retreated at its approach, not daring to face it. Worlds surrendered before its shadow touched their skies. Others resisted and were reduced to ashes. Each battle was swift, each strike merciless. The galaxy watched in horror as Kane's words proved true. Humanity did not negotiate. Humanity conquered. The divide deepened. Some species begged for peace. Some screamed for war. Some plotted in silence, waiting for the perfect moment to betray. And across it all, one praise spread like wildfire. The galaxy is no longer united. One night, in the Council's private chamber, the speaker asked the historian a question that chilled the air. If humanity keeps advancing, if our unity collapses completely, can we still win? The historian's feathers drooped. Her voice was heavy with truth. "No," she whispered. "If we remain divided, humanity does not need to destroy us. We will destroy ourselves." The speaker closed his eyes. The chamber fell silent, and somewhere beyond the stars, the Leviathan's engines roared. The galaxy's fracture was complete. The only question left was simple. Would it burn or kneel? The Leviathan cut through the void like a blade through silk. Worlds burned behind it. Fleets shattered before it. The galaxy trembled as its shadow passed. Every message it broadcast was clear. Humanity had returned, and vengeance followed. But Admiral Kane had said little. He gave orders. He destroyed enemies. He accepted surrenders. Yet nowhere did he reveal the true reason the Leviathan had awakened. Until now, the Council, broken and desperate, begged for parley. At last, the Leviathan answered. A transmission filled the chamber, grainy, cold, carried on ancient human channels. The screen flared, and there he was, Admiral Kane. His scarred face was calm. His eyes burned with centuries of purpose. Behind him, the bridge of the Leviathan glowed with life, officers moving like parts of a single terrible machine. "This is Admiral Kane of the United Human Fleet," his voice boomed. "You ask why we have returned. You beg for reason. Then listen." The chamber fell silent. Even the most hardened warriors leaned forward in dread. Kane continued, his voice slow, measured, every word cutting like iron. "We did not build the Leviathans for conquest, not at first. They were not weapons of war, but shields, arcs, cities among the stars. Each carried our people, our knowledge, our hope." The delegates exchanged uneasy glances. None of their histories had spoken of this. "But when the war came," Kane said, "when you turned against us, when the galaxy hunted us, the Leviathans became more. They became our swords, our vengeance, our survival." His eyes narrowed. "And we swore an oath. an oath that even death and time could not break. On the Leviathan's bridge, officers straightened, voices joining his in unison, chanting words older than any council law: "Humanity does not fall." The chamber shivered as if the words themselves carried weight. Kane raised a hand. "You think we return now by chance? That we are relics awakened by accident?" He leaned closer, his scarred face filling the screen. "You are wrong." The silence deepened. "We slept with purpose," Kane said. "The Leviathans were programmed with one mission, one that would activate if humanity ever fell. To rise, to rebuild, to reclaim what was ours." Gasps echoed in the chamber. The truth fell on them like a hammer. This was not vengeance. Not only vengeance, this was destiny. Kane's voice grew colder. "We do not come to negotiate. We do not come to beg. We come to finish what you tried to erase. Humanity will return to its throne. The galaxy will be ours again." His gaze swept the chamber as though he could see every trembling delegate. "And you will kneel, or you will burn." The transmission ended. The chamber exploded into panic, some shouting for surrender, some swearing to fight, others collapsing into silence. The speaker did not move. He stared at the empty screen, the echo of Kane's words still ringing in his skull. The Leviathan's true mission was not a mystery anymore. It was a sentence. Across the stars, the message spread like wildfire. The Leviathans were not accidents. They were seeds of empire, designed to awaken if humanity was ever destroyed. Every world understood the truth. The Leviathan was not only a warship, it was a promise, a plan written in blood and steel. And now, that plan was unfolding. On the bridge of the Leviathan, Kane watched his officers with grim pride. "Sector secure," one reported. "Factories restored," said another. "Cryopods at 30%. More soldiers waking every cycle." Kane nodded. Humanity was rising again, one soldier, one weapon, one world at a time. He looked at the star map, points of light spreading across the galaxy. Some red with resistance, some green with surrender, some already dark, erased forever. He spoke softly, but every soul aboard heard him. "The galaxy thought us forgotten. They buried us in silence. But humanity was never gone. Humanity only slept." He stood tall, his voice rising, carrying through every deck, every corridor, every waking soldier. "And now we rise," the crew answered as one. "Humanity rises." Their voices thundered through the ship, echoing like war drums across the stars. The Leviathan advanced, engines burning brighter than suns. Behind it, worlds fell silent. Ahead of it, the galaxy trembled. And as the carrier moved deeper into alien space, its mission was clear: to rebuild the empire of humanity, to reclaim the stars, to finish the war that had never truly ended. The galaxy's panic had only begun.